There's no sound in the world quite like a high school at night. Hallways that usually ring with slamming lockers and shrieking teenage voices feel like empty cathedrals, every footstep echoing twice as loud as it should. The hum of fluorescent lights fills the silence, and the rows of classroom doors stand in perfect, mindless order like a parade of blank faces. That silence has been my reality for the past 2 years. I'm the overnight janitor here. Mop, bucket, cart, the whole cliche. It's a job nobody else wants. People say it's too lonely, too creepy, too much time to think. I never minded. In fact, I came to crave it. The quiet meant no arguments, no questions, nobody watching while I worked. But every job has secrets, and this one is no different. You don't hear about them in training. They're not written in the employee handbook. It's the other staff, the ones who've done the graveyard shift, that pass them along in mutters you're not supposed to repeat.
At exactly 3 a.m., the school changes. It isn't loud. There are no flashing alarms, no sirens. Just a soft, unmistakable sound. The click of locks all down the hallway, opening when they shouldn't. Dozens of doors you bolted shut at midnight suddenly unlatched without a hand to touch them. At first, I thought it was just old building quirks, warped frames, cold air shifting metal, until I saw them open. Not just unlock, not just creak, one by one, easing wide like invisible students sliding in for homeroom. And when 3:01 arrives, every hallway is waiting for you to step inside.
Most of my shift is ordinary. I clock in at 11, well after the last teacher's car has disappeared from the lot. The front office is dark, phones unplugged, the secretary's desk stacked with papers no one will touch until morning. My cart squeaks like an offbeat metronome as I make the rounds. The cafeteria always comes first. The smell of fryer oil lingers no matter how hard I mop. I sweep crumbs from under long metal benches, empty trash bags that weigh like bricks from spilled milk cartons, and hear only the buzz of exit signs overhead. In daylight, that place is deafening. At night, it feels like a tomb stuffed with echoes of laughter that should still be there. The hallways are next. I drag my mop along scuffed tile floors, passing trophy cases and faded motivational posters curling at the edges. Every footstep clatters too loud, bouncing up into the ceiling rafters until I feel like the building itself is mocking me. Sometimes I stop to breathe, holding still just to prove to myself it's only my echo chasing me.
I genuinely like the work. The rhythm is calming. Sweep, mop, empty bin, repeat. You finish one hall, then another, ticking them from an endless list. But the stillness clings uncomfortably, like the place isn't abandoned so much as waiting. By 1 a.m, fatigue sets in and the school grows colder. The heating vents barely groan that late. I rub my arms, shiver, and press on. It's routine, mundane, predictable. Still, even on my first week, I noticed doors I'd locked earlier sitting unlocked again an hour later. The first few times I shrugged, told myself heat shifted the frames, or maybe I'd just been careless. But locked doors don't open themselves, and I don't make mistakes that often. Every night before 3 a.m., the building grows tense, like it knows what's about to come.
On my first night, back when everything still smelled new from wax tile and replacement bulbs, the head custodian handed me a laminated sheet. No letterhead, no signatures, just typewritten text doled by a cheap office printer. "Keep this on you," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Don't ask questions, just follow it." I thought it was another cleaning checklist. Change the water in the mop bucket, check fire extinguishers, stock paper towels. It wasn't. The title hit me first. Overnight instructions. Lock every classroom door before midnight. Double check. At 3 a.m., you will hear the locks click. Do not panic. Do not look directly into the rooms. If a door swings open, walk to it calmly, close it gently, and move on. Never step inside to inspect. If you hear voices calling your name, they are not students. Do not respond. Do not enter room 212 under any circumstance. If the intercom buzzes with no call scheduled, ignore it. Cover your ears if you must. The mirrors in the theater wing reflect more than yourself. After midnight, avoid that corridor entirely. Leave only when daylight touches the cafeteria windows. If you attempt to leave early, you will not succeed.
At the bottom was one final line scrawled by hand in fading blue ink. Trust the rules, not what you see. I laughed then, actually laughed. Nervous humor, expecting him to crack a smile, to say it was some initiation gag passed between custodians. But he didn't. His eyes were tired, his lips pressed into a firm line, and he only repeated, "Don't ask." I tried anyway. "What's in room 212? He paused long enough that my grin withered. No one who went in ever gave an answer. Then he walked away, leaving the sheet limp in my hand. For weeks, I obeyed out of courtesy more than belief. But the longer I worked, the more I noticed how carefully others avoided the topic. Teachers never mentioned the third floor north wing. Security guards shook their heads if I joked about ghosts. The rules weren't funny to anyone else. And the closer midnight crawled, the more they stopped feeling like suggestions.
I remember the first night clearly because it was the one that finally convinced me the rules weren't some scare tactic or hazing ritual. It was early November, cold enough that frost etched spiderweb patterns on the windows. I'd locked up every last classroom, twisting each knob 3 times for certainty. As always, the halls lay silent and sterile, a place where the only sound belonged to my squeaking cartwheels. I checked my watch. 2:57 a.m. 3 minutes until my round was finished. Normally by then, exhaustion dragged my eyelids down. But that night, I stayed wired, waiting to see if the warnings meant anything. I stood in the science wing, mop resting against my shoulder, eyes glued to the line of doors stretching into the dark. The clock hit 3. Click. Not just one, not in sequence, all of them. The sound erupted along the hall like a row of bones cracking. Handles rattled, bolts sliding out of place, locks giving way without a key in sight. 10, maybe 12 doors, all at once. The sound was subtle, yet absolute, unmistakable for anything but locks unlocking. Every hair along my neck bristled. I squeezed the rule sheet in my pocket like it was a Bible. Don't panic, don't look directly inside. So I forced myself forward. My shoes squeaked loud against the tiles as I moved from one open doorway to the next, gently pulling them shut, repeating a rhythm. Close, latch, walk away. But from the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. The history classroom gaped wider than the others, spilling darkness into the hall. I refused to look in directly, but peripheral glimpses betrayed too much. Desks weren't where they should have been. Their outlines looked dragged into crude circles. On the chalkboard, faint white haze resembled scrawled letters. My gaze slid away before I could fully read them, yet I caught a final stroke. Stay out. The door slammed shut under my hand before I touched it. I nearly bolted. Instead, I repeated the rule. Calm, close, lock, keep moving. But then came voices, soft ones, layered over one another, curling out of the math room like steam. I thought I heard my name. I bit my tongue until blood filled my mouth and kept walking. One by one, I forced the frames closed, dragging myself with mechanical calm, though my body screamed to run. By the time I reached the stairwell, silence returned. The locks reset, doors held tight, and I realized my entire arm was shaking, white-knuckled from clenching the mop handle. That was the night I stopped laughing at the rolls. For weeks afterward, I obeyed. Each time the locks whispered free at 3 o'clock sharp, I averted my eyes, closed the doors one by one, and swallowed every urge to peek inside. Fear kept me steady. Fear kept me safe. But fear has an ugly twin called curiosity, and every night felt like a dare. One shift in December, the pull was too strong. I'd been mopping near the art hallway when the locks gave their midnight chorus. Usually, I turned my head slightly, counted steps, and closed them all in quick rhythm. Except this time, room 108 yawned wider. Its doorframe glowed faintly, not with light, but with its absence, a deeper dark against ordinary shadow. I stopped at the threshold, mop-handled digging splinters into my palm. "Don't look inside," I recited under my breath. "Don't look." But something inside seemed to breathe, a hush like waiting lungs. I leaned in. The room was colder than the hall. Frost coated the inside windows, arcing into thin symbols resembling runes I couldn't recognize. Desks no longer marched in rows, but sprawled in imperfect circles, each chair facing inward like an audience around something absent. Papers littered the floor, some yellowed, some damp, curling upward as if resisting water.
The chalkboard drew my gaze next. For just a moment, the writing was clear. "Stay out," in trembling, frantic strokes. The second the fluorescence hummed on overhead, the words vanished. Then something scraped. Not a chair, not my cart, a dragging sound beneath the linoleum. My chest seized. I spun the lights brighter, sweeping the beam across corners. Empty, but the scratching persisted, like nails beneath the floorboards, threading under my soles. I stumbled backward across the hallway, heart stampeding. The desks shifted, just slightly. A leg creaked. A chair in the circle turned a fraction toward me, though no breath of air stirred. Don't run, don't scream. The rules rang louder than any siren. With trembling hand, I wrapped fingers around the knob and swung the door closed. Click, silence. I staggered down the hall, whispering the mantra, "Never open, never enter." But I also knew I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. Someone, something had left that message, a warning erased only when touched by light. And worse, my curiosity wasn't satisfied. It had been fed. That night, I finally understood why none of the others asked about the rules. Not because they didn't want answers, because answers demanded you break them.
By the time my shift ended that night, the rules weren't enough. I needed proof. Part of me still held on to logic, drafts pushing doors open, creaky frames, maybe prank graffiti left over from some edgy senior back in the 80s. But the moment I shut off the lights and sat in the security office, I knew I was lying to myself. All schools keep cameras in the halls. Ours use them more for vandalism than safety. The feeds were grainy black and white, time-stamped in green numbers that ran with occasional glitches. I queued back the recordings from 2:50 a.m. onward, leaning close to the monitor. At first, silence. Hallways stretching long and empty, just as I had left them. Shadows stiff across linoleum. Then came the sound. My own heartbeat drummed as if the building knew I was there with it. At 3 o'clock exactly, every lock unlatched. I expected frames to jitter under the poor resolution, but the footage was clear enough. Handles turned without contact. Doors trembled, bolts sliding. One by one, the dark mouths yawned open. Chairs shifted inside. Far back in the science lab, a rolling stool spun a half circle on its own. I played the feed again, pausing when movement stirred. This time, I caught more. Shadows, walking. Not tall like staff, not square like adults, slender, child-sized. Their outlines were hazy, sometimes stretching too long, sometimes vanishing in the flick of a skipped frame, but they moved in groups. They passed desks, brushed walls, circled chalkboards, then faces. For only a few frames, 5, maybe 6 students sat silently in one classroom facing forward. Their bodies were still outlines of gray mist, but their faces were disturbingly sharp, pale, sunken cheeks, mouths slack as if dropped open forever. I jolted back,
The footage stuttered again and they were gone. Desks empty. I flipped to another camera. More shadows roamed. At one point, the corner of the lens flickered like static, but in those jagged lines, a boy leaned into the feed, staring directly at the camera, directly at me. His eyes were two pits, his mouth cracked wide in something between a grin and a scream. I slammed the monitor off, hand shaking so badly the mouse rolled to the floor. The walls pressed tighter around me, and silence filled my ears. I realized I had leaned too close to the screen, my nose nearly grazing it, as though I didn't just want to look, but fall through. The rule sheet's final line burned into me. Trust the rules, not what you see. And from then on, I stopped thinking of this as superstition. It was evidence, grainy proof that the school held more students than the morning roll call ever would.
I learned quickly that staring at tapes wasn't going to give me peace of mind. What I needed was context, why these things were happening in the first place. Asking around during the day wasn't easy. Teachers politely avoided eye contact if I lingered too long with questions. The principal waved me off, muttering something vague about old buildings having quirks. But I'd seen their expressions tighten whenever the subject of late-night shifts came up. They knew more than they were saying. The answers, instead, came from the older staff, the cafeteria cook I sometimes caught smoking behind the loading bay, the boiler technician whose knuckles looked like scorched oak, the retired custodian who still wheeled himself into basketball games. You didn't even need to ask directly. Whispers traveled whenever the subject of the fire arose. It happened nearly 40 years ago. Official reports were thin, full of bureaucratic padding. Ask any local, though, and their version outlived any newspaper clipping.
The school had held a nighttime fire drill rehearsal, some sort of safety evaluation. Half the students were still inside when a spark leapt through the third-floor wiring. Classrooms sealed, locks failing in place. The smoke churned faster than teachers could herd children out, and panic twisted corridors until nobody knew what was open anymore. Some escaped through windows, some suffocated before firefighters arrived, and some were never found. Never found, that was the phrase everyone repeated. The halls looked intact the next day, but the roll call never balanced. Families demanded answers. Lawsuits hit the district. Administrators vanished, retired early. The building reopened with plaster patched and records scrubbed, but scars like that don't close. The lore carried on in whispers. Kids dared each other to peek into room 212, rumored to have held the brunt of the smoke. Teachers insisted morning cleaning crews found desks rearranged. And overnight janitors, the story always ended with resignation, quitting partway through a shift, refusing to say why, except muttering, "The doors opened." Even more unsettling, dates matched. The fire had sparked at exactly 3 in the morning, when the practice drill turned chaotic. Ever since, the locks mimicked that same moment, clicking open at the precise time when frightened students once begged to get out. I folded the rules sheet in my pocket that night, running my finger over the warning about room 212. Suddenly, it wasn't a superstition. It was a headstone carved into protocol.
Every rule on that crumpled, laminated sheet was strange, but one line weighed heaviest. Do not enter room 212 under any circumstance. For months, I obeyed. I swept past that door at night with a wide berth. During daylight, it blended in like any other classroom. Beige walls, laminated project stapled over corkboard panels, a padlock bolting it shut. Students walked by without pause. Nothing marked it as different. Nothing except the way my stomach hollowed every time I pushed the cart near. But knowledge gnawed at me. After hearing about the fire, after watching those tapes, I couldn't stop wondering, was 212 where it started?
Was that where the kids never found had been left behind? Curiosity is a disease. By mid-January, I was coughing with it. That night, I prepared. I pocketed a spare flashlight, double-checked my master key, and whispered to myself that I'd look only for a second. Just a glance, nothing more. I locked the rest of the doors early, then wheeled my cart extra slow until it squeaked before 2:12. 3 a.m. The locks sang their metallic chorus. Handles shifted, and in perfect unison, room 212's bolt clicked open. Its padlock swung loose, hitting the floor with a ring that reverberated down the hallway. I froze. My throat went dry. Then, my hand, betraying me, reached forward. The knob was colder than ice. I twisted, and the door yawned wide. The air inside hit me first. Stale, damp, charred. It was the smell of burned wood long ago trenched with water. Desks huddled in rows, but each bore deep scratches like fingernails dragged endlessly into the laminate. Scorched patches peppered the tile, blackened and spreading like disease. The walls stole my breath. They weren't painted like every other room. They were plastered floor to ceiling with photographs, old yearbook pages, portraits, team shots, all stapled and peeling, colors fading. And every single face had its eyes blacked out, scraped with ink, gouged with scissors, scratched by nails. Hundreds of students, their hollow sockets circling me like an audience of blind witnesses. I staggered deeper, heart slamming. Then I saw the last row, the final desk at the back. Its surface wasn't carved with graffiti or half-hearted doodles. It bore just one name, my name. Letters cut so deep into the wood I could feel splinters through the air, fresh as though waiting. The fluorescent light sputtered above and died. My flashlight beam shook across the room. That's when the whispering began. It wasn't one voice. It was dozens, overlapping in breathless gasps, rising and falling like wind caught inside lungs. They weren't speaking words I recognized, not at first, but when combined, their sound formed a single word, hammered into my skull. Stay. The door slammed behind me. It clicked. I yanked it open instinctively, stumbled into the hall, and let it close again with a crash that nearly toppled me. The whispering cut off. My hands bled from gripping the knob so tightly, and I realized the worst part wasn't the whispers. It was the fact that my name had been carved before I ever dared step inside. I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Pretend I hadn't stepped over the threshold, hadn't seen the gouged out eyes in those photos, or the desk carved with my name. I told myself walking away meant it wasn't real. The school didn't let me lie. By 3:15 that same night, the building changed. It started with the intercom. A low, guttural buzz split the empty halls, though no call light blinked on the wall. The speaker above cracked with static, stretching into whispers that echoed down the corridor in every direction. I yanked my cart faster, willing my body toward the boiler room. Then the static phased into a sound unmistakable. My name, spoken slowly, drawn out syllable by syllable. I clamped my hands over my ears, rule number 6 repeating in my head, if the intercom buzzes with no call scheduled, ignore it. Cover your ears if you must. But hearing isn't what hollowed me. Feeling it did. The voice wasn't just over the speaker. It pressed into my chest, vibrating ribs, clenching organs like icy fingers. Next came the cart. I had parked it midway down the math wing. Turning around after shutting a door, I saw it rolling on its own, far too smooth for the uneven tiles, squealing wheels gone silent. It drifted a perfect line toward room 212. I sprinted, grabbed the handle, and dragged it back.
But the moment I turned, every door I had closed creaked wide open again with perfect synchronicity. Click, slam. Click, slam. The chorus of locks was deafening, like the fire drill whistles trapped in an endless echo. Cold swept under my sneakers. When I glanced down, condensation streaked the floor, filming into frost that spread like veins toward my heels. Shadows lapped against the walls, darker than night, rising like smoke without fire to feed it. And then the screaming began. Not external, not audible, inside. Hundreds of voices poured through my skull at once, pleading, promising, threatening, clamoring from cracks in my mind that didn't exist before. I dropped my mop, squeezed my head with both hands, staggered against lockers until the metal rattled under my weight. The air buzzed, every light above flickering in spastic rhythm like broken fire alarms. It all stopped at 3:16. Every bulb brightened at once, the lockers stood still, the doors slapped shut, the intercom clicked. Silence fell. But the frost traced along my skin where invisible hands had touched me, and a single phrase lingered heavy in my mind. You looked. Now you belong.
The other incidents I could explain away as tricks of the building, faulty wiring, shifting air, exhaustion messing with my head. But what happened at 3:20 that night stripped away excuses. It wasn't the school creaking. It was them. I was dragging myself toward the exit doors, lightheaded, when I felt it. A sudden drop in pressure, like the air itself inhaled and held its breath. My ears popped. The hallway stretched too long beneath buzzing lights. Then I heard footsteps. They didn't echo like mine. They were softer, light, uneven, like rubber soles dampened with water. They multiplied. One set, two, then a whole crowd, coming from every direction at once. I froze. My pulse drummed through shaking knees. Shapes bled out of the corners. At first I thought they were shadows, but they carried weight. Figures emerged, thin, pale, uniforms scorched and torn. One girl's clothes were fused to her skin with black char. Another's arms dangled too long, fingertips dragging the floor. Their eyes were pits, hollow with dripping soot, but their mouths opened in silent movements, repeating words I couldn't hear. I staggered back, throat dry. "Help us," one whispered, though her lips never moved. The voice bled into my skull, soft as smoke.
The crowd swelled, filling the hall like water rising. They didn't lunge, they drifted, too many legs moving too slowly, but the space between us closed with terrifying speed. Dozens of them now, faces warped with burns, mouths frozen in perfect circles of breathless screams. One boy stepped forward, his skin blistered and cracked red, and reached out. Instinct screamed to run, but my body locked as his hand closed around my wrist. The temperature plummeted instantly. My skin seared with frostbite, blue veins spiderwebbing outward beneath my flesh. Pain surged to my elbow. I wrenched back with every ounce of strength. His grip lingered even after our hands parted. Ice etched into me like a scar left by fire's shadow. The murmuring voices rose until words tangled into one shriek. "Let us out!" Lockers crashed open in unison. Books and jackets erupted, flung into the hall. Glass shattered from classroom windows all at once. Lights above popped, raining sparks in exploding flares. I staggered blindly toward the stairwell, clutching my wounded wrist, heart slamming like it would burst through my ribs. The crowd pursued in perfect silence now, their heads tilted in unison, watching me run. And in that silent gaze I understood they weren't asking anymore. They were demanding.
I don't remember making the choice to run.
My body acted before my mind had a chance. One second, I was frozen in their stares. The next, my shoes pounded against tiles, my breath lashing my throat raw. Behind me, the doors began to roar. Not open in quiet clicks as before, but slamming wide, every handle turning, every bolt snapping. Wooden frames splintered as if kicked from the inside. One by one, every classroom on every floor gave way. The screams came next. They weren't the whispers I'd brushed off before. They were full voices now, shrill, tortured, desperate. Hundreds of them layered over one another, crashing into my ears until meaning broke off into chaos. My knees weakened, lungs begging to stop, but adrenaline pushed me forward down the stairwell toward the first floor. Halfway down, the intercom shrieked, "Come back!" The voice warped with static, like it peeled from dozens of throats at once. My molars buzzed just hearing it. I stumbled into the main hall. Doors up and down the corridor gaped like hungry mouths. Shapes twitched within, dozens of them, pressing at thresholds, eyes hollow, hands clawing. Some whispering bargains. "Just open one more. We'll let you go. Just one." I clutched the wrinkled rule sheet so tight it nearly tore. The last scrawled line pulsed in my head. "Trust the rules, not what you see." And that's when it hit me. Every door begged for me to look inside. That was the trap, the lure. They wanted witnesses. They wanted acknowledgement. So I shut my eyes. I stumbled blind, hands skating along lockers as the shrieks battered me, felt hands clutch at my sleeves, icy fingers twisting me sideways, brushes of charred breath across my neck. I clenched my eyes harder, repeating aloud, "Close the doors, don't look, don't answer." The air thickened, burning like smoke without fire. My chest heaved, throat near collapse. Desks skittered across linoleum, chasing me. The ground tremored under phantom weight. Still, I forced myself to walk the path I memorized. Straight down, left turn, double doors.
Something seized my ankles. I wrenched free, stumbling nearly to my knees. The rules screamed in my skull, "Do not step inside. Do not respond." I kicked until my shins bruised, until the grip slackened. Then, silence. Not gradual, but immediate. Every voice cut out. My ears rang. The hallway settled. I opened my eyes to dawn light streaming through the cafeteria windows. The doors stood sealed again, bolts locked. The intercom hung dead. My body sagged in relief, though my damp uniform clung cold. Every inch of me throbbed. Frostbite still etched across my wrist, but I was alive. The school had tested me, and I had chosen correctly. I trusted the rules over everything my senses begged me to believe.
I'd called out sick the next morning. My wrist was mottled with bluish frost, the imprint of that boy's hand still stinging under my skin. No doctor could explain it. Some kind of chemical exposure, they guessed. I didn't argue. What could I say? That a ghost tried to drag me into a classroom that doesn't stay empty? When I returned the following night, the building looked normal again. Garbage bins full of crumpled homework, posters taped crooked on walls, basketball banners waving lightly in the heat vents. The world wanted me to believe nothing had changed, but I couldn't unhear it, couldn't unfeel it. The whole building, watchful in silence, waiting for the next hour to roll past midnight. Thing is, I still needed the money, so I stayed. Cleaned, locked doors, followed the rules letter by letter, never daring to pest them again. And sure enough, 3 a.m. always came. The locks always clicked open, and I always walked the halls to shut them with trembling hands, pretending calm. But every so often, I see details no one else does.
desks angled differently than I left them, handprints smudged on windows too high for kids to reach, notes scrawled faintly on chalkboards in handwriting none of the teachers recognize. Names. Some I don't know, some I do. Fresh faces, classmates, coworkers, and once, carved deeper than all the others, my own name again. The school doesn't hire long-term custodians anymore. They cycle us in shifts, pushing new ones through, hoping we last, hoping we don't ask too many questions. If anyone wonders why, the answer never reaches daylight. So here I am, still mopping floors no one walks on, still hearing the locks snap at exactly 3 a.m., still reciting rules written decades ago by people who couldn't follow them for long. If you ever find yourself inside a school at night, don't laugh at the stories. Don't tell yourself it's just imagination. And above all, if the clock strikes 3 and you hear every latch lift at once, remember this. The doors don't open for you. They open for the ones who never got out. And they're still waiting for someone to let them in.